Hey everyone, Movie Guy 2005. Welcome back to another video. And today I'm going to be doing a movie review of a film that came in 4th place as part of a poll I made for 4 movies a while back in one of my community posts. And this is a film that I'd actually reviewed at least twice before. And it was actually one of the very first films I ever reviewed when I started this channel. So, I think it was for a singular review and then part of a re-reviewing them and then ranking the trilogy in one video as well. I forgot about doing that video. Jeepers creepers. Anyway, enough of me yammering. The film in question is none other than the 1985 classic Back to the Future. So, yeah, let me move this over here. There we go. So, yeah, let's go and start with the plot, shall we? So, the plot concerns Marty McFly. He's a teenager in 1985. He lives in Hill Valley with George, who's a meek, nervous, kind of nerdy dude. He's bullied by Biff, his supervisor. Lorraine, his mother's a alcoholic. She's depressed. His older siblings are unsuccessful, both socially and professionally unsuccessful. He's late for school. He gets 4 tardies in a row. He even gets called a slacker by the principal. You got a real attitude problem. You're a slacker, Marty. You're a slacker. And his band, the Pinheads, are doing a music audition. His band doesn't do well. And you actually get to see a cameo by Huey Lewis himself. Yes. The same guy who made the songs Back in Time and The Power of Love for this film. He's the guy with the megaphone that says, "I'm afraid you're just too darn loud. Next, please." Then he confides in Jennifer Parker, who it's his girlfriend. He tells her, "What if I'm no good? What if they say, get out of here, you're not fit for this, kid?" And he's basically scared that he'll end up just like his parents. He even says that, "I'm starting to sound like my old man." Then Marty arrives back home, and later in the night, he meets Doc Brown at 1:16 a.m. at the Twin Pines Mall. And Doc reveals this contraption that he made, this time machine made out of a DeLorean, a modified DeLorean to be exact. It's also powered by plutonium, which he swindled from Libyan terrorists or Libyan nationalists. Anyway, he swindled from the Libyans, which they eventually arrive and gun Doc Brown down at the Twin Pines Mall. Marty gets in the time machine. He escapes in it and gets it up to 88 miles per hour. Then it gets sent to 1955. And along the way, he discovers that George is still being bullied even then by Biff. George is pretty much like a peeping Tom. He even looks through his binoculars at Lorraine changing. Marty gets hit and knocked out unconscious by a car, and he wakes up and realizes he is indeed in 1955, and he sees his mother, Lorraine, who she becomes infatuated with him, even calls him Calvin Klein as well. And he's obviously very uncomfortable with her advances and everything. And along the way, he's basically trying to make George a more confident person, a more successful person. And he's trying to make Lorraine a more happy person who's living her best life. But his actions are also altering the future and pretty much erasing his existence. He notices like his siblings on the picture, on the photo, are also being erased. And at one point, I think Marty starts to erase as well. And he tries to fix all that. He attempts to get George and Lorraine together. Early attempts fail, but he eventually does get them together. And it fixes his future and doesn't put his future in jeopardy. Later, he returns back to Doc Brown, gives him a note. The Doc tears it up and gets back in the DeLorean, and he gets it up to 88, and the lightning strikes the clock tower and then into the DeLorean. It gets sent back to 1985, Back to the Future. And he set the time to arrive 10 minutes before he witnessed Doc being shot at the Twin Pines Mall, now being called Lone Pine Mall, because early on he knocked down one of the pine trees at Peabody's farm. One of the twin pine trees, he knocked it down. And Marty arrives, and all hope is lost for him until the Doc actually wakes up. The Doc notices that he has a ripped up note that he pieced back together, and he also has a bulletproof vest. Doc then takes Marty back home, I should say. And then Marty wakes up the next day. His father's very successful. He's a lot more confident now. He's a very successful sci-fi author. And his mother is more happy, more in good shape, and pretty much just living her best life. And his older siblings are now a lot more successful than they were before, and Biff now works in auto detailing. As his old Ford crashed into the manure truck. It's really, really funny scene where Biff and his friends are all like, shit! And then they crash into the manure truck. But anyway, Marty goes outside, reunites with Jennifer. He's wanting to take his new Toyota truck for a spin. And then Doc arrives back in 1985. He says, Marty, you got to come with me. Where? Back to the Future. He tells Marty and Jennifer about their kids, and he basically wants them to save their kids from horrible fates. And then it ends with, roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads. The DeLorean floats up and then flies to the screen. The end. So that's basically the plot of the film. This is definitely one of my favorite films of all time. I actually watched this in the theater for its 40th anniversary re-release. And it was such a pleasure to watch in the theater. I felt like I was in the 80s, even though I wasn't born in that decade. I was born 2 decades later after this film came out. But yeah, it definitely felt like watching it in the 80s for me. And just, yeah, I love the look of the time machine, the DeLorean time machine. I think it's a very iconic looking movie car. Definitely one of the more iconic ones for sure. And since we're on the subject of the DeLorean, for those that don't know, the DeLorean was actually a failed car back in the day. It was a sales failure, and its final model year was 1983. DeLorean Motor Company had gone bankrupt by 1982 or so. I think probably late 1982. And John Z. DeLorean, the founder of DeLorean Motor Company, who also had experience working in General Motors, he was arrested as part of a FBI sting. I think it had something to do with drugs or something. So yeah, the DeLorean was a sales flop. Financially, a flop. And then the movie comes out, and the DeLorean becomes a very iconic piece of pop culture history, especially now that it's almost always associated with the time machine in these films. And Back to the Future was a major hit when it came out. Spawned 2 sequels. It became a successful trilogy. Now, fun fact, from what I've heard, from what I understand, it was originally going to be a cliffhanger ending. They weren't really going to make any sequels. But then this movie was highly successful, and they were going to probably make sequels anyway. And they also shot the sequels back to back too, as well. So, yeah, and also, while Michael J. Fox was the first choice in mind for Marty McFly, he was unavailable at the time because I believe he was doing that show, Family Ties, at the time. And Eric Stoltz was Marty McFly for a bit until I think certain part of shooting of the film he was fired and then eventually replaced by Michael J. Fox. I think you can actually find the footage of Back to the Future with Eric Stoltz in it. I think I'll probably try to put a link or something down in the description box, show you what I'm talking about. So yeah, and it basically worked out in the end for him. And from what I understand, Christopher Lloyd was originally disinterested in doing this. He didn't really want to do the role of Doc Brown at all. But I believe he was convinced by someone close to him or a friend of his. I'm not totally sure. But he was eventually convinced into doing it. And it worked out for Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd. And this movie was a huge success. I mean, spawned one of the most successful trilogies ever. Has tons of merchandise. And I forgot to mention, it also spawned this. Back to the Future, the game from Telltale Games. And there was also a animated series as well from back in the day. So, yeah. Great cast. not only do you have Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd, you also have Leah Thompson, Crispin Glover, and Thomas F. Wilson as Biff Tannen, which probably his best known role for Thomas F. Wilson is Biff Tannen in these movies. So yeah, highly successful franchise, spawned a lot of merchandise. And while we're on the subject of that, I also have this. The Lego Speed Champions DeLorean, which came out this year, actually. I also have these 2 minifigures. I have the Part 2 figures as well. So, yeah. Overall, do I recommend Back to the Future? Oh, absolutely. Especially if you love 80s films. Especially if you're a fan of Michael J. Fox. And if you haven't seen it yet, definitely give this a look. Very memorable characters, very iconic movie car. Yeah. Definitely one of the best films ever made, and definitely somewhere in my top 10 favorite films. Probably at least in the top 5 or so, somewhere there. But yeah. Definitely one of my favorite films. I love Back to the Future, and the DeLorean is also my profile picture as well, in case if anyone didn't know. But you know. So yeah. So that concludes my review for Back to the Future. As always, thank you guys for watching. Take care. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.